Descent of Dragons is upon us, and the meta has shifted drastically. Thanks to the addition of so many powerful new cards, the meta has massively changed, with so many new faces crowding the ladder. Sadly, one deck is standing tall upon the rest, with Galakrond Shaman being the clear dominating force of the meta. Despite all of these new decks having such powerful new cards, Galakrond Shaman is simply too well-rounded and versatile. In fact, this archetype has already received attention from Blizzard, with them announcing the announcement of balance changes. Many players are excited for these balance changes as it shows that Blizzard is willing to fix issues, whereas others think it's simply too early. It'll be interesting to see what cards are changed, but until then the meta will continue to undergo new developments and see new decks. Before we take an in-depth look at the meta, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with all of our Hearthstone content. Now let's begin. Leading off the meta snapshot this time around is the previously mentioned Galakrond Shaman. This archetype is a cut above the rest, leaving it in its own tier for the time being. It's rare that decks are strong enough in Standard to justify placing them in tier S, but it is clear that this deck deserves it. In the first 24 hours of the expansion's launch, Galakrond Shaman had no lower than 50% in any matchup. In fact, the lowest win rate that it had was in the mirror, which shows simply how incredible the deck is. One of Galakrond Shaman's best matchups is against Pirate Warrior. The majority of cards in the Shaman deck counter the aggressive Warrior deck, making it very hard for the Warrior to find wins. As for bad matchups, Galakrond Shaman is severely lacking many. The one that stands out as its worst matchup is Holy Wrath Paladin. The Paladin has enough tools to stall out the pressure the Shaman can apply, giving the Paladin enough time to assemble their combo and close out the game. Galakrond Shaman will remain the best deck in the game until Blizzard nerfs it in the coming weeks. Next up on the tier list is Tier 1. This tier is typically at the forefront of the snapshot, but is currently second to the S tier. Today we're going to take a look at the entirety of Tier 1 and what makes the top decks in Standard so good. Leading Tier 1 in this meta snapshot is Tempo Rogue. Making use of the new card Necrium Apothecary, this archetype has explosive swing turns. On top of this Death Rattle package, the deck also features a standard Tempo Shell, which gives it a decent way to win games on its own. Being able to play a Necrium Apothecary and activating the Death Rattle allows you to beat slower decks fairly easily. It's very difficult for most decks to beat an onslaught of 7/7s, making Mechanical Whelp the perfect Death Rattle for this deck. On top of this, aggressive decks can struggle against it, as Ziliax will often lock them out of the game. This archetype performs best against decks such as Control Warrior, who typically can't deal with sticky Death Rattles. As expected, Tempo Rogue still struggles with aggressive decks such as Pirate Warrior. Often this matchup comes down to if the Rogue can draw Ziliax, as they often die to pressure if not. Next up in Tier 1 is Highlander Mage. This archetype saw a lot of play previously when Luna's Pocket Galaxy was 5 mana, but fell out of popularity following its nerf. Thanks to the powerful dragons that Mage was given alongside the new Highlander card, Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, Highlander Mage has made a resurgence. The deck is very powerful and flexible now thanks to the diversity of the cards in the list. We expect to see this deck only get better as the meta is more refined. Currently, Highlander Mage takes advantage of Tempo Rogue as it's one of the best decks at dealing with Death Rattle minions, thanks to the improved Polymorph from Malygos and several board freezes and clears. In terms of bad matchups, Highlander Mage struggles against either pure aggression decks like Pirate Warrior or combo decks like Holy Wrath Paladin. Mage struggles with these decks as it wants to interact with the opponent as much as possible, whereas the other decks want the exact opposite. Highlander Hunter is the best performing Hunter deck, finding itself in the middle of Tier 1. The archetype received a lot of support thanks to new cards such as Dwarven Sharpshooter, Corrosive Breath, and the new Alexstrasza. The new Dragon Shell seems to be supporting the class very well, giving Hunter a very promising future following any balance changes that are to come. Highlander Hunter is a deck that only gets better as the meta is refined, as players can tech their list accordingly. Highlander Hunter currently performs best against slower, value-oriented decks such as Highlander Mage or Holy Wrath Paladin, and struggles against decks that can continually outvalue it and live through their pressure, such as Galakrond Shaman. Next up is a fan favorite in Pirate Warrior. This archetype received massive amounts of support in the new expansion. Angar is by far one of the best cards the deck has ever had, and we here at Tempo Storm expect Pirate Warrior to be one of, if not the best decks when Shaman is nerfed. Pirate Warrior is a purely aggressive deck that aims to take board in the first few turns, and then transition to a burn plan by killing the opponent with charge minions and weapons. Pirate Warrior does really well against decks that don't do much in the early turns, such as Highlander Rogue or Highlander Mage. Sadly, some decks are built in a way that makes it hard for the warrior to win, such as Galakrond Shaman, which has access to taunts, rush minions, and freeze effects. Holy Wrath Paladin is the last deck that we'll be looking at in Tier 1. This archetype only received Sathravar from the new set, but it was all it needed to keep the deck afloat. Giving it a new way to flood the board with Shirvala the Tiger means that it can essentially make a fight for board when needed. On top of this, it allows the deck to focus more on its cycle package as it has a new way to heal. Holy Wrath Paladin is one of the only decks to bolster a favorable win rate against Galakrond Shaman, making it a very solid choice for ladder currently. Just like before, though it struggles against decks that can gain armor to surpass the limit of the Paladin's burst. This makes Control Warrior one of its hardest matchups, so avoid playing Paladin if you're seeing a lot of them on ladder. Before we wrap up, we wanted to give you a counter pick in order to help you out in the Shaman-filled meta. As we mentioned before, there really aren't many decks that can easily answer the army of Shamans, so it's important to familiarize yourself with the counters that do exist. Aside from the previously mentioned Holy Wrath Paladin, the best choice is Quest Hunter. This archetype finds itself in Tier 2, but the thing it does best is beating Galakrond Shaman. Quest Hunter was seen as a fun deck in the previous metas, but now the archetype can consistently pressure the Shaman until they eventually succumb to the hero power, Ramkahen Roar. The Hunter archetype features a lot of rush minions, which allows it to easily interact with the Shaman's board while continually developing one of its own. On top of this, it also makes use of the new legendary Shuma to develop boards continually until answered. While Quest Hunter can definitely struggle in some matchups, it does its job of answering Galakrond Shaman very well, so we suggest picking it up. With the dragons having descended, the meta has changed drastically, and we're excited to see it continue to develop before and after the balance changes. It's impossible to say where decks will fall in the future, but for now, these decks are the ones that are performing best. Let us know in the comments below what decks you've been experimenting with so far. Thank you for watching our Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot Breakdown. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with our future Hearthstone content, from standard deck spotlights to battlegrounds guides. See you next time!